So hello guys, welcome to the Philosopher. In today's video we are going to see the verse number 4. So we'll start directly. If you have not watched the previous videos, go in the description, there is a link of the playlist and start watching from verse number 1. It is good and it is only for you. So in the verse number 4 starts with, it is only because of ignorance that the self appears to be finite. When ignorance is destroyed, the self, which does not admit of any multiplicity whatsoever, truly reveals itself by itself, like the sun when the cloud is removed. So, let me remind you what we have seen in the previous verses. So, in the first 1 to 3 verses, he talks about, he give emphasis to the knowledge of the self, and how important it is in one's life to realize the self, the knowledge. And he also says that everything other than the knowledge of the self is ignorance, is ajnana. And चाहे कुछ भी you do anything, any spiritual practice or whatever, but without the knowledge you cannot get the liberation, in other words moksha, that is breaking free from birth life cycle, birth death cycle. And we have also talked about what is that burning desire for the liberation. So now in the verse number 4 he says, it is only because of ignorance that the self appears to be finite. So the self, what is the self? The self is you. And if you think you are body and the mind or intellect or whatever, the universe and all that, it's all ignorance. Now how can I say that everything is ignorance? We'll see that. We'll see in the whole text, the whole book, and I'm 100% sure that you will be convinced later after. So now, the self is the Atman, the concept of Atman or Atma given in Bhagavad Gita or in every text, in every Hinduism text, you will find the concept of Atma. That Atma is you, and that is the self. And we think that the self is finite. You can, in other words, you can also see this way that the self can be said as the consciousness, as the awareness. जब आप अवेयर होते हो, एज यू कैन सी यू एग्जिस्ट, एंड आपकी जो ये जो फीलिंग है, जो अवेयरनेस है एग्जिस्ट करने की, दैट फीलिंग कम्स फ्रॉम द सेल्फ, एंड दैट इज द सेल्फ. वी मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल थिंक दैट द सेल्फ इज फाइनाइट, दैट इज आई or you, I am the finite. Why is it so? Because we think we are the body, we are the mind, and we can only see, hear, taste, whatever our senses are, whatever we could see in the world, whatever we can feel, it's all these things are finite, and we cannot go beyond that. Most of the people think like this, and it's very common. It feels like we are finite beings. We can max to max think about something extraordinary out of the world, out of the box, but we still think we are finite beings. But the Vedanta says you are not the finite, the self is infinite, and it is because of ignorance, it is ajnana. अज्ञान की वजह से हमें ऐसा लगता है कि हम एक finite beings है, but we are not. We will see this in detail later. So जब अज्ञान खत्म हो जाता है, when ignorance is destroyed, the self, it reveals itself by itself. Now what does that mean? Like a light, you can say. Do you need any proof to prove there exists a light? Not at all. We don't need any proof. Light is self-luminous. Light खुद एग्जिस्ट करता है और वो खुद का प्रमाण है. In the same way, self, that is awareness, you as a awareness, is self-luminous. You are aware, and what proof do we need that we are aware? हम लोगों को ये प्रूव करने की आवश्यकता नहीं है कि हम अवेयर है. वी आर अवेयर एंड दैट इज सेल्फ luminous. So in the same way, when the ignorance is destroyed, the self is, it appears to be infinite, and you will feel that after some time, after going through all this text. Now moving ahead to the verse number 5. Through repeated practice, knowledge purifies the embodied soul stained by ignorance, and then itself disappears as the powder of a kataka nut disappears after it has cleansed the muddy water. So here he says that we are living in the ignorance, which is like the same as muddy water, and we are not seeing the purified version of ourselves, that is the pure water. So in India there is a powder of kataka nut, or there is something kind of nut which is used to clean the water, and it actually cleans the water. So after cleaning of the water, the powder separates and it disappears. So in the same way, when the ignorance, the knowledge, first of all, it purifies the ignorance in oneself. ये जो अज्ञान है, that we are finite, and all sorts of अज्ञान, ये ब्रह्मांड का, ये माया का अज्ञान है, ये ड्युअलिटी का अज्ञान, सही गलत, अच्छा बुरा, खंडागरम, ये सब दुनिया भर का जो भी अज्ञान है, that अज्ञान is destroyed, it disappears, and only the true self remains, only the knowledge remains, only ज्ञान remains. So ये जितने भी दुनिया भर के आइडियाज़ है, सुख दुख वाले, जितने भी चीज़ें हैं जो हमें लगता है सत्य है, but it is not, and that is ignorance. So that ignorance disappears and the knowledge appears, and it is self-evident, and you will realize the true self, that is the Atman, the Brahman.